Hi guys and welcome to our channel, Dose of Realness with Liz and Henry. I'm Liz.
And I'm Henry.
And we decided to make this podcast because I'm currently in my program for marriage and family therapy. And I thought it would be a really great idea just to talk all things couples. And I asked Henry if he would join me.
Yeah, so Liz asked me to be a part of this channel, and I thought it was an interesting idea. I am in a relationship myself, but I'm in no way a relationship expert, and I think it becomes more obvious with time. But I think that I do bring like a sense of reality, and at the very least, experiences that I've learned from, and that I think everyone can learn from.
Yeah, definitely. We do have some special guests, which are my dogs. So don't mind them. But yeah, today we kind of just wanted to talk about our very first toxic relationships, kind of how like that was for us. Maybe talk a little bit about like some signs we noticed. And finally, just kind of like how did we get out of those toxic relationships to where we are now? Because we're both in very healthy relationships, and so in case any of you guys out there are going through a relationship where you don't know whether or not to leave, maybe this is the place where you'll find those answers. So, do you want me to start off with my story, or do you want to say your story first?
You can start.
So my toxic relationship was in high school, and I know a lot of people like they're like, oh, like high school doesn't count, but this one counts because it took like 5 years to get out of and for me to realize how toxic it was. And I think it was just really hard because I had to keep it a secret from my family, from my parents. And so even that in itself, like the fact that I had to keep it a secret makes it toxic, I feel. And he was an older guy. So yeah, like all around, just all the signs were there of like, this is not good, don't do this. And especially for any of you guys dating someone older and you're like in high school, like my advice to you is just like don't do it. There's way better things out there, and like these guys know what they're doing, and it's really just like taking advantage of you, especially at a young age, because this is like your first form of love, and to have someone older teach you that, like you're gonna get so wrapped up in it and you're gonna see yourself spiraling down. And yeah, like some of the things he would do is like he would turn me against my family, and it was just like, you know, a person that loves you wouldn't make you go against your own family, and I think that's something that he would do. And it was just overall bad. Like I had a bad relationship with my mom, with my dad, with my siblings, because I at one point like I had one of my brothers keep it a secret, and I think that was really hard for him to see me do that and go through that. Excuse me. And yeah, like I remember one day he just kind of he asked me to run away, and you know at the time I was a teenager and I was dumb, like I was really stupid, and I did it for some dumb reason, and I regret it. I mean, I don't regret it. I don't know how to explain it. Like I regret it because I wish it wasn't something I had to go through, but I'm also grateful for it because I went through it and I learned from it, and I just feel like if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be where I am today, if that makes sense. What about you?
For my story, I wasn't as young. I wasn't in high school. I was already in college. I think a big part of it was that it was my first love, and that was part of the reason why I made so many excuses for it. Same kind of situation. I had to keep it a secret too, and it wasn't necessarily because he was like telling me to keep it a secret. It was more of just like there were so many things that I knew that the people that I love and the people that love me and care about me wouldn't approve of, and so I always said like no, because it's one thing for me to be able to deal with it, but when I bring in people that I love and care about and start affecting them, that to me was like, I don't know if I could make it through that, you know?
Yeah.
And that should have been enough of a sign for me to know, like, and it's not gonna work ever, you know? Like, why are you, if you know, like, it'll hurt people that you love, like, there's chances that it hurts you, you know? You're just making excuses for it. And that was my case. It did drag on way longer than it should have, you know? And like you said, like, I don't know, sometimes I still struggle with the idea that it was something that I had to go through because I think that I knew a lot of the bad situations that I was in and a lot of the bad habits that were forming and that were presenting themselves to me in the relationship, I think I knew everything. I still just continued it. And a big part for me was like the time that I put into it and the energy and thinking like, what I want versus like what is. Like I always wanted it to work. I always wanted to end up with this person, or at least I thought I did. And I let that cloud what actually was in my face.
Definitely. I mean, what are some signs that you kind of like saw when you were in that relationship that like you kind of knew it was toxic, but you weren't ready to let that go quite yet?
The first one, as I said, was definitely like, if you have to keep your partner a secret from the people that you love, like that in itself is a sign enough to be like, well, why? Why do I feel that this person wouldn't be good for me, or that others wouldn't see him as good for me, you know? Because it's like, people who love you and care about you, they're going to have valid points. They're not just going to be like, don't be with that person just because we don't like his clothes or something. It's always deeper than that, you know? Definitely. So that was one reason. And like I said, he never asked me to keep it a secret. I just felt that I had to, because I knew that the people that I cared about the most wouldn't approve of it. And a second thing, I don't know, aside from hiding, it was just the way that we handled all of our conflict. It was always fighting. And sometimes it was fighting without resolution, but I just convinced myself that if we fought about it, it means we addressed it and we fixed it. Even if we didn't.
Or like you were fighting for the relationship.
Yeah,
definitely. I think definitely like if you're hiding it, that's sign number one, because I feel like the people around you, like, they're not just gonna tell you, like he said, like, they're not just gonna tell you something just because, like, it's like the outside looking in. They're gonna see the signs before you even do, because you're gonna be so blinded by this person, and you're gonna think like, oh, I love them, and then this and that. And like, I've known Henry for 5-6 years now, and I never met this person that he's talking about. And so like, he was definitely hiding it from us, or like from me, and I think he knew that it was wrong, right?
It's like you said, I think sometimes you just don't want to hear the like, then leave them,
Yeah, and I think like if you don't want to hear that, like that's a sign to look out for. Like why are you avoiding it? Like, people are telling you for a reason, and I don't think you should necessarily get mad at those people or block them out of your life, because they genuinely care for you. Like, especially if it's people you've known for a long time, like, it's not because they're jealous or anything. It's like, hey, we're concerned this person is, doing this and that. Like, just kind of look out. I also think, like, what else is a sign? If they're keeping you away from, like, your friends. Like, sometimes, like, they want to have that control, and, like, for me, when I was in that toxic relationship, he definitely, like, kept me away from my family. Not kept me away, because obviously I lived with them, but, like, he made me go against them. Like, if it was like, oh, it's us against the world. It's us against everyone else that doesn't want a relationship to work. And so I definitely got into, like, a lot of fights with my mom and, like, my siblings and my dad, because I was just like, oh, you just don't understand. We're in love, And I definitely lost a lot of friends because of it, because they also saw the signs. Like, obviously he was hitting on them, and I'm looking back at it now, like, I was mad, but maybe they were telling me he wasn't good because they knew that he was hitting on them, but they didn't want to tell me.
And that is, like you said, something to pay attention to, because are they creating distance between you and the people that you love? And like, that's a really hard thing to do, because you can convince yourself that, like, for this person, you'll just start telling yourself, like, yeah, these friends are bad, or like, yeah, my parents are wrong, or like, everyone's wrong. And it's like, it's very hard sometimes to catch yourself doing that, because you do love that person. But at the same time, like, ask yourself, are they willing to do the same for me? Like, are they willing to be like, oh, they don't like me right now, but I'm gonna make more of an effort to have them come around, to make sure that they feel comfortable for me, like, your partner has to be able and willing to do that. I think that, like, in my toxic relationship in the past, thank God I'm not in it anymore, but I think that he didn't care. Like, I think that I would bring up, like, oh, well, I would want you to meet my friends, and he just didn't care. He'd be like, well, I don't want to meet them. or like no, like that's you know, and that was like a sign in itself, and that's part of the reason why I never brought him around, because I'm like, you don't care enough to like, even if like we don't know if they'll like you or not, like you didn't care enough to be like, I'm gonna make an effort to make sure they come around or to make you feel comfortable versus like, let's create the distance or stop hanging out with them, you know?
I mean, I think like in a healthy relationship, like that person would want to like, I mean, they don't have to be best friends, but definitely like be cordial and be able to have certain conversations with people, you know, versus being like, let's just avoid it altogether. And like Henry said, like you want to pay attention that you're not just like being like, oh, you're right, like let's not do that, or like think that it's your idea when it's really your partner, the one that's kind of feeding you those things.
Yeah, and that's a really hard thing to spot out. Like, you know, that's just everyone goes through that, I think. And, you know, unfortunately, like you won't realize these things sometimes until you end up until the relationship ends and you end up with nothing. You know, you realize like, what the hell? I really did give up all my friends. Not because I wanted to, but for this relationship, and like for what? You know, was it worth it? And no relationship should ever make you feel like you have to drop every single person in your life, or like every person, like you said, that like has a problem with your relationship, because you know, it's like you said, if people really care about you, they're pointing out things that you should pay attention to versus just like create a wall and be like, no, like you don't know anything, and that's like, well, if they care about you and they love you, they have a point, and it's worth at least evaluating, you know, looking deeper into your relationship and seeing that kind of stuff. And I think we don't do that. Like, do you think you did that, like while you were in the relationship? You think you evaluated it deeper, or just like went with like, he's right, they're against us?
I mean, for me, like, I was in high school, so although I want to say, like, I knew, I think, like, I was just so blinded with, like, being in love with him and wanting to make it work. I don't think I really evaluate, like, so, you know, when he would cheat on me with, like, a friend or something or someone else, like, I blamed the other person. I wasn't blaming him. I wasn't like, oh, it was you're the one that did it. I was like, no, like, you know, this girl hit on him, and like, you know, and I think that's, you know, that's where I went wrong. Like, I shouldn't be blaming the girl. I should have been blaming him. He's the one going out and looking for those things. Did you?
Did I see it? I think yes, and I think that's part of a big reason why I kept it a secret, like from you and from my family, because you know, I think that I already knew these things, and so had I told you guys, you know, you would have just called me out on it. It's like you said, sometimes you don't want to hear it, and you made a really good point in saying that like you love that person and it made you blind, because I think a lot of us confuse that, thinking that love is blind. Like, love can be blind, but it shouldn't be. You know, it definitely should not cloud your judgment in a way that's like negative or causing distance between people you love, or making you do things that aren't natural to you, you know, like it should be blind in the sense of like you can see past people's like small flaws or stuff like that, you know, things that maybe like aren't like, oh, I don't love that about you, but it's something I can see past, versus like you know, like, oh, I'm giving up my friends for you, or I'm letting go of my own judgment for whatever you think is right or wrong, you know? Definitely. Because I've been in that situation too, and I've come to learn now, being out of that toxic relationship and being in a much healthier relationship, that love isn't blind, it's clarity, actually. When you're with a really good person, you won't only see like bad habits and problems arise, but you'll also like see a solution, you know? And I think versus just wanting one. I think when you're in a toxic relationship, you never see a solution. You always just want one. You know, you confuse what is, like I said, with what you want. And you're always going to tell yourself like, well, I want us to last. I want us to be together. But you don't actually see that solution. And sometimes you don't even have a clue how to get there. And so that's what I mean. Like, love shouldn't be blind. It should be clarity. You should see some kind of like, you know, forming good habits on how we address these issues, you know, like
definitely.
I think that's what it is.
I also think like if you're constantly like putting excuses up for that person, like that's definitely another sign. Like you shouldn't be like, oh well, like he had like a tough background, or like, oh, like he's just like that and stuff like that. Like, you don't want to constantly have an excuse for your partner, and you have to be very careful of how many times you catch yourself like being like, no, like I understand, I get it, like, you know, like sometimes it'll work, like it's case by case, you know, but if you're constantly being like,
no, like he doesn't go out, and that's why he doesn't want to come out with us. Like, no, like they can make that effort, once in a while, once in a blue moon, like not all the time,
Yeah.
but like you said, like they're gonna want to do that effort, and they're gonna want to get to know, like.
And even what you're describing right now is like, that's something that you're creating a bad habit, a toxic habit within yourself. Like if you're always saying that, like you said, like you're just finding a new way to forgive this person or to make an excuse for that person. Like, so a lot of people don't realize that that's a habit that you're gonna carry on. Like the next person you get with, if they're hurting you, you're gonna do the same thing for them. You're gonna be like, well, you love me, or well, I think they love me, or or like a lot of the time it's like, you make excuses for yourself for them. Like you say, like, well, I've already put so much time into this relationship, so I'm gonna forgive him so that we can continue it, so that it doesn't just end. And it's like, at some point, like, they have to be willing to take the responsibility too. Like, are they doing that? Is it just you always like having to forgive this person, or make an excuse for them? So yeah, that's definitely something to pay attention to. And that's also that takes us to another point of like, evaluate how happy you actually are in a relationship.
You don't want to be dating an onion where you're constantly crying in your relationship. And that's not to say like relationships are supposed to be easy or you're not going to cry in them once in a while.
They're hard. Relationships are hard.
They're hard, but I think it's like when you constantly find yourself crying and you're just, you've hit rock bottom, and like there should be more happy than there is sadness and
pain and
pain and hurt, and you really have to pay attention to those things. And I also think like not just with that, but intuition, like deep down in your gut when something's going on. And if you're constantly questioning that relationship, like that's definitely something you need to listen to, because you're not going to a healthy relationship constantly. At least for me, like I've been in my relationship for 6 years, and maybe in the beginning, like, where it's rocky and you're just getting to know each other and all that, like it makes sense. But if you're constantly like just questioning, like, I don't know, I think that's definitely a sign to look into.
Yeah, definitely. And like a part of that is like, I'm also in a like much healthier relationship right now, and I'm so grateful for it. But I have made my own mistakes in it, and it's like you said, it's catching yourself like in these habits and making sure that you're like making the change versus just continuing it. But it's hard. One thing I will say is that and the plain truth is that knowing that somebody is not good for you doesn't make it any easier to leave them or to not love them,
it's definitely like a process, because you can have your friends tell you like, oh, this and that, or your family tell you this and that, but sometimes we have to go through certain things in order to realize, like I always say, it's not a loss, it's a lesson, and you have to learn certain lessons in life. Unfortunately, pain and suffering come with it. And there's this like saying that I recently saw online where it's like, you go through the same like lesson until you learn it, and it goes back to like what you're saying is like, what are you bringing to your next relationship that's toxic, and you're constantly gonna go into that cycle,
or if you're even changing
because if you don't take that time like after that toxic relationship to kind of figure yourself out and change, you're gonna bring that back into the next relationship, and you can't have that excuse of like, well, it's just all the guys I'm dating, or because at that point it's like, no, like you're in a cycle that you keep,
and you're making choices.
Definitely.
I think that's a valid point. I think that as hard as it is to catch yourself in a toxic relationship or to realize that the person that you're with is toxic, it's just as hard to realize how much of that negativity and that toxicity did you pick up. Like you don't leave a bad situation, majority of the time, and this is again just because of the reality of things, you don't leave something that's like that traumatic and that hard and not walk away with some negative stuff. You don't, it's impossible to not pick up some negative habits, and I think that like I've learned that about myself, I've been that person where at some point I was just like, oh, men are trash, like it's all men, or it's like it's everybody and it's them.
It's everybody but me.
It's everybody but me, exactly. And just taking the time to grow for myself, and not only that, but getting into another relationship and having it be so much healthier. It's basically like a test for me, you know, where a lot of my issues come back and I'm like, oh my God, am I the person that I was running away from?
Yeah.
And what am I doing about it now? Like, am I going to continue to be this, like, am I going to become that person that I didn't want to be with? Am I not going to have a regard for, like, their feelings and my feelings? Or do I stop it here? Do I end the cycle here? And do I make a decision to be like, I'm going to be better. I have to be better. And I'm just going to, like, convince them and prove to them that I am going to be different, because that's also benefiting me. You know, it's me overcoming what I've been through, you know, to become better. But yeah, it's just like we said, it's hard, you know. And when, like, how would you say that, like, how did you leave it? Like, how did it end for you?
I mean, I think I kind of went over it a little bit in the beginning, but I mean, it was hard. It honestly, like, it took me 5 years, like, on and off, because I think we were like officially together like the whole time for about 2 years, and then the last 3 years was just like going back and forth of like, he's with another girl, he's with me, he's with another girl, he's with me, and I don't know. I think I took, like, when I went to college, I took a lot of time for myself to, like, self-explore. Like, I was just dating. I wasn't, like, in a relationship. I was just talking to people and having fun and, like, meeting different types of people. And I think that kind of helped me, because I was like, wow, there's so much more out there than this one person who comes to me only when it benefits them, you know? And there was other people out there that was like, oh, wow, like, they're actually interested in me. Like, it's not all bad, you know? And yeah, like, I met my boyfriend now, and I don't know, he was just so different from all the other relationships that I had been in, that I was like, he's like, I broke the cycle of like, I'm not gonna go for the bad boy, like, he's a good guy, like, let me go for the good guys. And I think, like, I hear a lot of people say this is like, oh, like, I like the bad boys, or, you know, the good guys, we don't really want the good guys.
And that's like a bad habit that you you do get used to those bad situations, you know. And I have, like, a very similar story where, you know, like, my current boyfriend is so different in, like, the best way from, like, my last toxic relationship, that, you know, I wanted to try it, and I wanted to continue, and I wanted to end the cycle. And that's important to do, because, like we said, if you just become that person that's like, it's everybody else, but you're not actually addressing like the issue, like what was actually wrong with that person in that relationship, versus just saying, you know, like, it just didn't work out. Like, it's deeper than that. You have to fully understand why it didn't work out, so you don't carry that into the next relationship, and so you don't continue it. You know. And then, like, on that, while it was ending, do you think that, like, when you were in the relationship, that at some point you started to change what you were doing and how you were addressing certain situations? Or do you think that it was just a continuation of, like, I'm just doing what he's telling me to do, or what he wants me to do?
I think for, like, the first 4 or 5 years, I think I was just caught in the cycle of, like, I wanted to work, like, I've invested this much time, like, he's he's gonna be the one, you know? And like I said, like, I'm in high school, I'm young, like, I don't fucking know what is out there, like, this is my first love, and I'm thinking, like, this is it, you know? So I think it took me a long time to really, like,
start changing.
I don't think it was until, like, college when I was just like, okay, like, this is new, I'm exploring myself, I'm talking to other guys, and I'm living on my own, I'm not living at my parents anymore, and I'm kind of responsible for myself, so
everything changed.
I think it was until everything, because...
And that's so important, because what you're basically saying is that you grew. You know, there was growth there that made you realize, like, I can't continue this. And not only that can you not continue it, but you don't want it anymore, you know? And you have to pay attention to that, because if you're not growing, if they're not growing, that's why you're in a cycle, because there's nothing changing there, you know? And, you know, it goes back to evaluating, like, how happy are you actually with this person? Like, am I sad all the time, and why is it not changing at this point? You know, like, am I not changing? Because you do have to ask yourself, like, is there no growth with me? And does that have to do with that this person just doesn't let me grow? Like, don't confuse that, like, I think a lot of people confuse growth with like you've changed or like negativity. You know, some people think like, well, and and that goes to show too, like if you were becoming a better person, you went to college and you were exploring more and you were learning so much more, and that person was like, oh, you're just different now, and they make it seem like a bad thing. Like, no, it's not a bad thing. Like, you can love me as I evolve. You're supposed to. Versus, like, if that person wants you to stay exactly the same, that's also, like, toxic. They don't want you to grow in any way.
Yeah, and it goes back to, like, the control thing of, like, they want to control you, because change is really good in relationships, and we can have, like, a whole nother podcast of that. But, I mean, I've always told my partner, like, we can definitely grow together and become different people, and we can fall in love with the new people we're becoming, because for us it's like, oh, okay, I'm dating this new person you're becoming and I like it, versus being like, oh, you're not the same, I wish it was like how it was back then. And I think it's like you should look, or people should look at it in a positive, where it's like, oh, I'm redating the person I'm already in love with.
And are you still happy with them? Like, just change doesn't mean that you can't be happy with the person. And I think that's like a fear that people bring into a relationship, and that's what makes things toxic. If you're trying to control somebody or trying to keep something the same out of fear, that's toxic. That's one, you're projecting your fears onto the person that you claim to love, and two, you're just you're creating a box of like, you can't get out of this, or else I'm not gonna love you.
I definitely think there's like a cycle of toxicity in a relationship if you're in one. It's your partner and yourself.
Yeah, like, it goes back and forth.
Yeah, like what toxicity do you bring into the table? Because for me, like, I think one of my toxic things that I brought into the relationship was that I was constantly begging him. I was just like, no, don't leave me, and I shouldn't have. Like, there's a difference when you're trying to work through something and fix something, and there's a difference when you're begging someone to stay with you. And I was begging him because he was cheating on me. And because he wanted to leave me. And I'm like, no, like, I love you, like, this is supposed to work. But I shouldn't have been begging someone to stay that clearly didn't want to stay in the relationship.
Yeah, and you have to be, that's another hard thing to spot out, is, does that person actually want to be with you, and like in the right way, like everything that comes with growth and a healthy relationship, or do they just want to keep you?
Yeah.
A lot of times people just want to keep you, and that could be, you could be that person too. It's like you said, it's on both ends. We do it to ourselves too. Sometimes we know something's bad for us and we just want to keep them. We're just like, well, I don't want to lose you, and it's like, that can't be the only reason you stay in a relationship, out of fear of losing somebody. And it can't also be just like, oh, well, like, I put so much time in this again, I don't want to lose it, because it's like, that's not healthy. You're just doing the same, like, you're trying to keep them, and you're trying to keep the relationship in the same way, kind of, that they're forcing you to stay in it, or that they're like trapping you. Essentially, it's a trap, it's a cycle. And it's they're making it hard for you to leave them, and it's like, why?
Definitely. And I think that's like a good point too, like, people can manipulate you to stay in a relationship, and I definitely had a lot of manipulation in that toxic relationship, because like I said, when I would check his Facebook and I would see the proof, like, it was right in front of my face, but he would still be like, no, you're insecure, oh, like he made it seem like it was all me, and like, I felt crazy, because I was like, oh shit, like, am I insecure? Like, and maybe I'm not happy with myself. And it was, in a sense, like, emotional abuse, because it was every single time. And think about it, that's 5 years of a teenager being told, like, oh, it's you. Like, that was really hard for me to get out of and to grow from, but like, and I had the proof,
And so with that, did he ever take responsibility? And aside from that, did he ever change his habits?
He never changed his habits. Like, even now, like, he'll still try to, like, I haven't been with this person for 7-8 years, no, more, I don't know, it's been a lot of years. And he will still hit me up and act like I'm his friend. And I feel like that's his way of trying to keep me in that loop of being like, well, maybe, like, if her relationship doesn't work, we can get back together. And, like, he'll tell me things about his relationship, and he'll give me the excuse of, like, well, I just need advice, and you're the only girl that I know that can give me that, or whatever. And even like he'll tell me stuff about his relationship, and even that sounds toxic. And I'm like, ew, like I'm so glad I left
There's no
you.
growth there, yeah.
Like he's just the same person, and you're this older person who made nothing out of your life. Like he's still living at home, and like he didn't graduate college, and it's just like.
But aside from all of that, like he's just.
There's no growth.
Yeah, there's no growth.
There's no growth.
And even just if you kept it between the relationship, like he's showing you that like he moved on to somebody else, and again it's a toxic.
Yeah.
And like thankfully it's just not you this time.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's important too. Like you have to see, is there change there at all? You know, and it goes back to the growth. You know, like people are gonna mess up. Relationships are hard and they're not perfect. And you know, like I've definitely had my own mess ups. And you know, one thing that I can say is that like. I realized the issue and I've had to take responsibility for it, you know? And I could have gone about it so differently because being in a toxic relationship, I know what it's like to have somebody, like you said, make you feel crazy or put that blame on somebody else. And it's so easy and it's so toxic to just like, it's honestly, it's a cowardly way of like getting out of a situation that you created.
Yeah.
You know, like you messed up and you'd say like, it's your fault or like, it's because you're insecure or like, if you would have done this, then I wouldn't have done this. And that's so toxic. And, you know, like I've had to face that and, you know, take responsibility. And that's important. Like you said, like if you don't see the person ever taking responsibility for their action, and even if they do, taking it one step further and actually seeing change in that, like, because, you know, there's guys that will be straight up like, oh, I did hurt you, and that's the end of it. And then they hurt you again. And it's like, I'm glad that you realized that you hurt me. Some guys will never admit to it, but like further than that,
there's no change.
Yeah, like I don't just need you to know that you hurt me. I need you to actually change it. You need to be able to see that.
I think going back to like the, you know, them manipulating you, and one of the things that my ex would always tell me is, oh my God, you're just always sad. And that was hard for me to hear as a teenager because like, it wasn't that I was always sad. Like, obviously, I was going through a lot of shit. Like, I had no fucking, like, relationship with my family. And this guy was constantly hurting me. And I couldn't feel like I could go to friends. So, like, I definitely felt alone. And I you know, I went to therapy. And, like, there was just a lot of shit there. And he would just say, like, oh, you're just always sad. Or you're just always crying. But he was the one that was making me cry. He was the one that was breaking my heart every single time. Being with the new girl every freaking day. Like, and that's something to look out for. Like, that's manipulation. No, I'm not. I wouldn't be crying if you wouldn't fucking be doing this shit. A relationship
is never just one-sided. And if that person makes you feel alone, like you said, or like it's all on you, that's not a relationship. That's like, what is that? You're just putting all the heavy shit on me and you don't get to carry anything. A relationship is like, it doesn't have to be 50-50, but you should never feel like I'm carrying the entire relationship. And not only like carrying it like I'm the one doing all the work, but just like I'm carrying in terms of like everything that's bad that's happening between us, I'm putting it on myself. And that person just gets to walk free and feel like, good, I'm glad that you feel that way, you know, because that's so toxic and that's so heavy. Like, that's hard. You know, and I think part of all of that, like, you have to realize that those are things that, like, unfortunately, like, they should push you to leave a relationship, but they keep you. Because if you feel bad about yourself, if you feel low, you're not going to want to explore anything else. You're not. You're going to be so scared about it, you know? And that's why, you know, that's the scary part is sometimes, like we said, you hit rock bottom and, you know, if you're lucky, you'll figure it out quickly. And if you're not lucky, it might never end for you. So you just have to keep questioning things. And, you know, at the very least, like we said, if you're more in pain or hurt in a relationship and you are happy, start there.
I think I know how I kind of hit, or like how I knew I was going to leave the relationship. I know you had asked me before, but I think I knew I hit rock bottom when I was in my bed. And I remember this day specifically because that's when I knew I was like, fuck, like, I can't do this on my own. I was laying in my bed and it was raining outside. And I used to share a room with my brother. So he had like his bed and I was over here or whatever. And I remember I would cry silently because I didn't want anyone to know what was going on, right? And I knew I hit rock bottom when I couldn't handle it anymore and I was crying. And I had to have my mom come lay with me. And my mom literally had to hold me that whole time. And I was just like, and my mom hated this person. My mom was mad at me. We didn't even have a relationship at this point. But I hit rock bottom so bad that I needed my mom then and there that I was like, I can't do this alone. And I think that's what helped me, like, you know, go seek help and kind of like get out of it because like, it was just like, holy fuck, like I'm crying here silently. Like if you're crying silently, like that's also another sign. Like I don't know. I just feel like you should be able to tell at least
Express it,
one
yeah.
person, you know?
It's like you said, that just goes back to like you knowing. Like if you
Yeah.
know that you can't express certain sad emotions because you know that you are making a mistake and you know that you can't open up to people because they're gonna be like, well, of course you feel like shit,
Yeah.
like you're in a bad situation, you know. So it just goes back to realizing that. I think for me, I don't think I was as lucky. I don't think that I had like one breaking point. Unfortunately, I think I went through too much.
Yeah.
And that's part of my regret is that I don't necessarily think that I had to go through everything that I went through. I should have known, I should have done better. But that's not the way things worked out for me. I think though, however, like as I spent time by myself and then now being in like a much healthier relationship, you kind of have a moment of like, this is what I want. This is, I don't want that anymore. I don't miss it at all, And it had to take me being open to that. Because it's like we said, if you're just jumping into the next thing that's the exact same thing, just a different person, you'll never realize it. But I was lucky enough to find somebody who's completely opposite in the best way from like that last relationship. And it took that, aside from me working on myself also, to be like, oh my God, things are so different. Like I'm so and here's the thing, it's not going to be like all sunshine and like I'm in such a better place. It's also those moments of like I'm so embarrassed of what I've been through. I'm so like hurt of what I went through and I would never want to go through that again. So what do I have to do and who do I have to be with to make sure that I never go through that again? Because I think that's how it was for me. It was a much longer process, and that's just in relationship. And as I grow in my current relationship, I'm realizing that my process is so much slower. So it's gonna be different for everybody. That was just mine.
Yeah, and I definitely like. I know we're talking about like, oh, we're in like other relationships, but that took time, like we didn't just jump into a relationship right after those. Like, no, we definitely took time for ourselves. I don't want to speak for you, but like at least for me, like I took a lot of time by myself to work on myself. Like I did not want to be in a relationship after that one because I like, in my head I was like, they're all the same, like men suck, blah blah blah. So I definitely like had a lot of time to heal from that. I don't think I like got into a serious relationship after that one until like maybe like a year or two after that, because everyone else was just like, oh, people I'm talking to, people I'm like hooking up with or whatever. And like I think definitely like don't think like, oh, I have to get out of this one to get into another one. Like no. You need to go through that process of like, what did I bring into that, what was wrong with that, and not just being like,
fully
oh,
understand it. Because if not, it's like we said, then you're just gonna keep being like, love just isn't for me, or like it's just these guys, and it's like, no, like even if it is those guys, what about those guys isn't like is putting you in these situations or is making you be in a toxic relationship, like you definitely have to spot those things out. And I was the same way. I did take time for myself. I do, however, think that even then, like I said, my process is just so much slower that it's even taking my current relationship right now, as healthy and as good as it is, to test me, to really have me like question and realize what toxic habits I brought into it, and because all of that, like, you cannot be in a bad situation that's so traumatizing, that's so heavy, and not pick up on like those bad habits. Like you just have to question it. And I wish there was like and maybe there are, I think like in a book you can definitely put like how to leave a toxic relationship and how to spot one, but in the reality, like you have to go through it by your own, unfortunately. And if you're lucky, you won't go through that much, and if you're not lucky, you'll go through so much. But again, that's just like, how do you end the cycle? Like, are you taking the steps? Are you questioning things the way that you're supposed to? What do you think on that?
I mean, I think it's like I said before, like it's not a loss, it's a lesson, and unfortunately life comes with a lot of like suffering and pain. So it's definitely things we have to go through. And I think if you take anything out of this video, like just know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, especially right now if you're going through something like this. Like there's time for change, and there's time for you to still get out, if you feel like this isn't the relationship for you. And don't focus on like, oh well, like I don't want to start all over, or this and that. Like no, like focus on yourself and heal yourself before even all that, because I've always felt like, it's in God's hands. Like, everything's gonna happen when it needs to happen, everything at its time type of thing. So, don't rush the process, but definitely go through it. You know?
No, and I agree too. And like you said, don't worry about the, oh my God, I'm gonna have to start over. And like, that's already like take time for yourself.
Yeah, that's already toxic.
Yeah,
Like, you
that's already
shouldn't be
toxic,
jumping
thinking that like,
from
oh my God, I'm gonna have to start all over with somebody else. And it's like,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to. Take time for yourself.
Mhm.
Really question everything and question yourself and think of how you can be better.
Yeah.
And not only that, but just tell yourself like, instead of thinking like, oh, I'm gonna have to start all over, just be like, I want to be happy. Start there. If you want to be happy and that person cannot make you happy and hasn't been making you happy, then just tell yourself like, I want to be happy, and that unfortunately means that I have to leave this person. And just keep telling yourself that all the time. It's like we said, if you're finding yourself in pain and crying and all of that more than you are happy, then start telling yourself, okay, then I want to be happy, and then you'll start to realize this person isn't doing it for me, and then you'll take it from there, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, is there anything else, any other signs that you feel like we didn't go through?
I think we touched on some pretty good signs. If that person is making you keep them a secret, if they're creating problems between the people that you love and other relationships that you value. What's some other ones you mentioned? Manipulation and control. If that person is, always wanting things to be their way or convincing you that their way is the only way things work.
Making excuses for them constantly.
Not taking responsibility.
And your gut.
Yeah.
Like, trust your gut. Your gut will not lie to you. I'm telling you. Like, I used to have dreams when my ex was cheating on me, and like you just know if the signs are there, look at them. And don't think of like, oh man, like, but we've already put so much time. Like, time does not define the relationship.
Definitely.
And
I think on all of that, one good thing to say is that like, just because you go through one of these things or some of these things does not necessarily mean that you're in a toxic relationship. Like, it all has to do with like the growth, like somebody can hurt you, but again, like, are they taking responsibility for it? Are they changing the way that because I think that could be hard too, is, like, there's so much confusion and there's so much like gray area where you're like, am I in a toxic relationship? Am I not?
I think it's a case by case for sure.
And you can hurt yourself definitely by saying like, oh my God, this one bad thing happened, so I must be in this must be so bad for me. And it's like, no, like, stop that, because then again you're going to carry that to the next person and it's a cycle again. And all of these toxic things, it applies in a relationship to both the people, both the person that you're with and yourself. You can be doing these things too, and that can definitely affect the way that a person reacts to you. I think like in my last toxic relationship, I think that's what it was, is that person was like gas and I was fire, and so when we were like together, it was an explosion. And that wasn't necessarily who I was. That was who that person, obviously I made my own decisions and I reacted in the way that I want to, but that person had a big effect on me, you know? And,
definitely.
There's no way that the person you're with is not going to have an effect on you. It's just what kind of effect they're having. Like you said, like, if the effect that they're having on me is that they're making me turn away from my family or my friends, or feel like I'm crazy, or that I have to do things that I know are not me, then that's a negative effect,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think overall, like, it's gonna be a process, and it's gonna be definitely so hard to get out of them. Like, there's no easy way, there's no guidebook. We're only just sharing our experiences and like things to look out for. But I mean, like I said, it's a lesson that needs to be learned, and it's gonna keep happening in all your relationships until you sit down and you learn from it, and change from it. Is there anything else you'd like to say to them before we end?
Good luck.
Yeah,
it's hard, and again, just because it's hard doesn't mean that it can't be good, but I would leave you with just always question, are you happy?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you guys so much for watching us. Make sure to leave any questions that you would like us to answer, any videos you would like us to make. We have so many ideas for you guys, and hopefully you guys just take a piece of information with you guys, and hopefully it helps you guys just a little bit more. Thank you so much, Henry, for being here.
Thanks for having
and
me.
doing this with me, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye!
Bye!